I was on his campaign side.
Oh.
I was like, what do you mean it's not live for you? ¿Cómo estás?
Good. I was getting like water for him. No me perdí, so that's
Okay,
good.
bueno, mira, corbata. Nunca vas a ver con corbata.
Orange. It's good.
It's actually a color I like. Caption good, thank you.
Because it's good violence prevention.
Yeah, well, Giants too.
Oh, yeah, the Giants.
Giants.
Sorry. They have too much
Are you a
into this
Dodgers
job.
fan?
No,
Oh.
no. Giants.
Right. Okay.
Oh, shit. Just wait.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, great. Awesome. Good. All right, cool.
Okay.
You're.
This one.
I don't see it.
I was on the other chain.
I do this one.
I created.
Add contact. Find out.
Oh, I forgot Lauren. This one.
In conjunction.
CIS or customs?
It's for ice, specifically.
Oh,
for
yes.
ice.
Yeah. Richard 06, just mine. Oh, I do actually. There's a special one we have in ours. In my blank folder, I'll send it to you. I don't know if you got it.
I downloaded one. Aaron Lauder from Mitsubi's office gave it to me.
So you have it? I included it.
I can get by. Yeah, go ahead. Say hi to someone over there.
Thank you. I'm just gonna move it up.
But I am.
Oh, I already had it on my calendar. Yeah.
It's
No,
best.
how I got the
It actually looked better.
So you focusing on this one or this one?
Social Security.
The little one?
Like somebody has.
Yeah, you guys will have the one.
I'm sitting up there. So I can see. Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, we can check also by
Go get my stuff.
position. Excuse me, thank you.
We're just going to wait a minute. There's some people still trying to get in. Is everybody okay if we don't wear a coat?
Yes. Yeah.
The record show we've got.
Oh my gosh. It just gets better and better. There's USB ports down there. Yes, right here.
Oh my gosh, it gets better.
When we went to college, it wasn't this nice.
I mean, when I went to
been a
college,
minute.
it was
This is phenomenal.
Thank you for being here today.
Of course.
Are you related to Catherine Beers?
Me?
Yeah. No. Okay, sorry. My apologies.
No, no, no. No worries. Oh, yeah. And then it's right up there with his desk.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started. Let me say from the beginning, I'm sorry about the parking. We literally tried every venue in town to line up for today, and everything, for whatever reason, is not available. So thank you for bearing with us, and again, I apologize. I want to thank UC Davis for allowing us, parking problems notwithstanding, for allowing us to be here today. And I want to thank all the great volunteers, a bunch of them from the UC Davis Democrats who have helped sign people in, help set things up, and then of course my great staff, Lucy, Will, and Luca, and Myra, who are here to help facilitate all this. And then, and Moises, our cameraman. And I didn't know if I could recognize you because of the union contract, being the cameraman, getting called out.
At your service, sir.
And then thank you, Governor O'Malley, for being here today. This is a big treat. We're in for an experience. He's an expert in this field. He's passionate about it. And when we did something together in Washington, I asked him if he would come out and do something in our district. And he said, absolutely. And he didn't settle for just one event in Davis. We're doing one tomorrow in Santa Rosa and tomorrow as well. So he is all in because he understands how important the Social Security system, Social Security program is, as do all of us. I'm passionate about it as well. I've got personal reasons, not that I'm getting Social Security, but I have a real personal story. I grew up with my Italian grandmother staying with us. She lived right next door to us. And she didn't drive. She lived in St. Helena where I live now. She walked to the store. She worked for as long as I knew her. She worked at the Napa Glove Factory. She was part of that World War II effort to sew gloves for the Seabees. Then later she went to work at what is now Francis Ford Coppola's winery in England, where she hand-labeled wine bottles for John Daniels at Inglewood, and then she retired. And she got Social Security. And growing up, I really didn't have an idea of what all that meant. I knew that she was able to live comfortably. She had food on the table, and the lights worked, and the heater worked. Didn't have air conditioning back then, but the windows went up and down. And she always had $10 for a grandkid. And she lived was secured into her retirement years. And it was years later that I was going through some papers, and I found out that she was a member of the Wine Workers Union. And I said, well, that explains it. So she had more than just her little Social Security. she had a bunch of money coming in from the years that she labeled wine bottles. And I was going through it, and you know, she got $54 a month. So it was pretty clear that had it not been for Social Security, she would have been in a world of hurt. And I think we can say that for anybody who's on Social Security or has survivor benefits or disability benefits and receive help and security is provided through the Social Security system. Been paying checks for 88 years, nobody's missed a check, and I want to see it continue to pay checks and nobody missed a check for another 88 years. And I also want to point out that it's more than just the person that gets the Social Security check that benefits from this. You know, clearly the family members do because you're not in the extra bedroom. But also the greater community. Every Social Security check that comes into a community is spent in that community. I would go as far as to say, bet that there aren't more than one or two people in this audience today who have secret bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. That money comes in, that money goes out, and it spends right at home, and it creates an economic ripple effect across the community. Any guesses on how much money comes into, let's say, Yolo County, Social Security? I've got it written down. 33,000 people in Yolo County get Social Security benefits. Every month, that's $59 million that comes into the county. $59 million spent throughout the county. And in our district, there's 153 people, 153,000 people that get Social Security, and it totals $286,000 a month that ripples across our community. So this is important for more than just the Social Security recipient, but this is important for all of our community. Now, I hear all the time from folks who are on Social Security or about ready to go on Social Security. They're concerned, they want to make sure it's strong. Governor and I were talking earlier about people saying, well, it's a good thing we got all those 150-year-olds off the roll. And I heard about that too, and I think everybody knows that that's malarkey. Anybody who tells you that's, as my mother would have said, they're full of prunes. And there's nobody who's 150, 130, well, you probably know the numbers, but probably nobody 110 that's getting Social Security benefits. So that was all smoke and mirrors trying to divide the communities, but people are concerned. They want to know. And the other thing I hear from people, and Governor, I don't know if you hear this, but all the time I hear, well, Democrats have been claiming that the Republicans want to do away with Social Security. They've always said that, but we still have it. Let me submit to you that the reason we still have it is because Democrats have been pointing out that the Republicans want to do away with it. It is no secret. In the last few years, last decade or so, it's become really, really evident. They've actually said it, that they want to privatize Social Security. If that happens, watch out. Because if times are good, you can probably pay the rent. Times are not so good, the only person benefiting from Social Security dollars are the investors that would be investing your money, and that would be a catastrophe. So thank you for coming out. They're at it again. They're closing field offices. They're closing district offices. They're fired people in the Social Security system, the people that make sure that it works, and they're out to discredit the Social Security program, to demonize it, and to eventually try and privatize it. So that's why we're doing these town halls. That's why it's important that you're here. And I can't thank enough Governor O'Malley, who was the Social Security Commissioner in the Biden administration. He knows the system inside and out. He's an expert. As I said, he's passionate about it, and he's taken his time. He flew out to be with us for today and tomorrow. So, Governor, thank you very much.
Congressman, thank you. I want to compliment all of you for sending to Congress such an outstanding member in Mike Thompson. Congressman is one of the most respected people on one of the most important committees in the House, and that is Ways and Means. And Ways and Means was the committee that had direct oversight over Social Security while I was there. But the respect that his colleagues had for him, and his plainspokenness, his directness, his honesty, to be forthright, to lead, and to lead without fear. I mean, that's the congressman that you have. So when he asked me to come out here, I said, is there wine? No, I said, of course I'd come out. My wife gives me that. She goes, why are you going out there again? I was in Phoenix, Arizona yesterday. This is a lot cooler. That was like 110 degrees. My wife says, why do you keep going out there? I said, I feel like I'm the Paul Revere of Social Security. I'm not warning that the British are coming. I'm warning that a pre-apartheid South African is trying to take your Social Security. And indeed, that's what's been happening these last several months. I found myself being actually out there in public and on, the cable shows more as the former commissioner than I ever was as the commissioner. But I wouldn't feel right if I didn't share with you what I learned about your agency that so many of us have taken for granted all our lives. And I talked to these young men up front who are bringing our average age down a little bit by showing up at this time. I said, fellas, when I was your age, we would all tell ourselves over a pitcher of beer, because drinking age was younger then, that Social Security wouldn't be there for us. Now I'm 62. They admit it, yeah, that's what all of us are saying as well. So let me share with you a few things here. I want to share with you what I've learned about Social Security, and I want to also blow up some big lies that are being told about Social Security. As Congressman Thompson said, it's clear that they are trying to wreck its reputation and wreck its customer service, and many believe it's so they can rob it of a big built-up surplus reserve. So I want to give you, the truth in plain language. How many of you have friends that have said to you, I don't even watch the news anymore. I can only take like 2 minutes a day. Yeah? We all have friends like that, right? Understandable response for our own emotional health and well-being, but it's not what our republic needs right now. We need to invite our neighbors, our friends, even our nitwit brother-in-law who only watches the Fox. We need to invite them back to our own tables of democracy. Because the way these guys succeed is by making all of us tune out. And you haven't tuned out, you're here. So this is what I want to share with you a little bit about how the agency actually operates. You kind of already know it. But maybe the way in which I explain it is helpful to you when you go back to your own neighbors and friends. I want to blow up some big myths. I'm going to show some big slides because, by God, at UC Davis, we've got some big boards to show big slides. So we're certainly going to make use of that for entertainment. And then we're going to do some Q&A. I'm going to go real fast. So if I don't fully explain something, we'll catch up in Q&A. So let me start, though, at a higher plateau. Recently, I read an article in Salon magazine, and it was interviewing Elon Musk, our erstwhile co-president. And in their interview with him, he said this, maybe some of you saw it. He said that he believes that empathy is the greatest weakness in the Western mind. Think about that for a second. In his worldview, to be empathetic for somebody that doesn't contribute to his economy is to be empathetic towards something or someone that is per se wasteful. That is by merit of their inability to contribute to the economy, inefficient. You and I believe differently, though, don't we? You and I are part of a living, breathing, self-created mystery called the United States of America. But the heart of that mystery is actually a very real thing. It is a very personal thing. It is the freedom to believe in and to act upon a powerful truth. The truth that we're all in this together. That we are one. That our cause is one. That we need each other. And that we have to help each other if we're going to succeed. You see, you and I understand that the greatness of our nation isn't measured in the size of our armies, the power of our bombs, or the amount of wealth we can accumulate. It's measured by the care and the compassion we demonstrate for one another. And so, yes, as Americans, we feed the hungry. We heal the sick. We care for widows and orphans. For those in the dawn of life and those in the dusk of life. Every soul. You know, recently my wife and I had the joy of welcoming into this world our first grandchild, little boy. And I was holding him at my daughter's apartment when in through the mail, my son-in-law says, "Look what just arrived from Social Security for the parents of your grandson." And I knew, as commissioner, I knew that from a building up on Wabash Avenue in Baltimore, we would send out 3 million such letters every year to the parents of newborns, but I'd never been on this side of it. And I watched the pride that those young parents experienced in opening up that envelope, holding up the card with his name on it and an individual number. And it was more than a card, and it was more than a number. It said, "Your baby matters to your country, and your country matters to that baby. And ain't nobody going to take our country from us. Not its goodness, not its strength." And so, let me share with you, let's blow up a couple big lives. Well, before we do that, let's have a little bit of audience participation, because all of that was kind of heavy. So when I say hands off, you say Social Security. Hands off?
Social Security.
Hands off?
Social Security.
Hands off?
Social Security.
All right, I'll shake it off. All right. Let me pop a couple of big lies, and then I'm going to try to click through some slides. And I'm going to do it all in the next 14 and a half minutes. So here's big lie number 1. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, and it's going backward. Like all Ponzi schemes do, it's inevitably going to collapse. You've heard this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm here to tell you that Social Security has never missed a payment in 90 years. Every month, those checks go out. No Ponzi scheme in the history of civilization has ever lasted 90 years. It is not a Ponzi scheme. No, Elon. Social Security is not a Ponzi scheme. Now, Bitcoin might be a Ponzi scheme, but not Social Security. And this is the way it works. Last year, all of us who were working in the economy paid in $1.3 trillion. That same year, those same dollars went out, and they paid $1.4 trillion to beneficiaries. Where did the difference come from? Where did the additional 100 billion come from?
Trust.
That came from the surplus reserve in the Social Security Trust Fund. And oftentimes when you read the news or see the clicks on, that gets a lot of eyeballs, the scary headlines that say, Social Security going bankrupt by 2035.
Yeah.
What they're actually talking about is that surplus reserve. So, this is the way it works. Social Security operates on a 75-year forecast. How many of us, show of hands, operate on a 75-year forecast? None of us. But Social Security does. And every 30 years, Congress gathers, and they look at that straight line 75 years, and they say, oh wow, we kind of dipped under it here, we dipped over it for this reason here, we've got to adjust it. And that's what they did back in 1983. So the story goes, 2 Irishmen, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, had a beer together and decided to solve Social Security for the next 75 years. So when they made that adjustment, they saw that the baby boomer generation was coming. Some of you were baby boomers. Our parents came home from World War II, fell in love, had lots of babies. So this big demographic bubble was coming, and they could see us coming in 1982 when I was in college. And so Congress intentionally built up a $2.6 trillion surplus reserve to last the lifetimes, the retirement lifetimes of the baby boomers. So 1.3 trillion came in, 1.4 trillion came out, and the difference came plunk, from that surplus reserve. Social Security is the only agency in our federal government that operates with a $2.5 trillion surplus. Remember when they caught the bank robber and they asked the bank robber, why is it that you rob banks? They said that's where the money is. So why are Elon Musk and Donald Trump messing with Social Security? That's where the money is. I saw your hand up. Can you hold till after? Or is it apropos of something right here now?
Right now.
Go ahead.
It's quick. Is the reserve in cash or is it invested?
Great question. Is the reserve in cash or is the reserve in investment? The reserve is required by law, at least since 1982, to only be invested in U.S. Treasury bonds, backed by the full faith and credit of the United States of America. So when you hear some of these people trying to say, oh, we can't afford Social Security, it's blowing up the deficit. That is also malarkey. It doesn't contribute to the deficit. It contributed to by all of us. Yes, sir.
So,
But it's an active class at UC Davis.
so you spent,
We
redeemed
we-
$100 billion this past year. Get it?
Correct.
So you took those special bonds, took them down to Treasury. Treasury paid Social Security, but then doesn't Treasury have to go out in the open market and borrow between 4 and 5%?
Yeah, so the question wasn't about, so when you needed that $100 billion, you didn't just pull it out of your pocket of Social Security, you had to redeem those bonds. Yes, that's how it works. And the same way that they borrowed it from individual investors and Chinese and other people. Yeah. It can, but that's separate and apart from this program operating on a pay-as-you-go basis. I mean, yeah, if you want to extrapolate out, my confirmation hearing, this fellow, where is he from? Johnson from Wisconsin. He said, those treasury notes, those are just worthless pieces of paper, aren't they? And I said, well, you could say that, but they're backed by the full faith and credit, because you got to admit it's worthless paper. I pulled 20 out of my pocket, and I said, you could say this is worthless paper, but after this, I'm going to go in the cafeteria and get a sandwich for it. So, let me get back on track here so we can open it up more broadly. First big lie, though, not a Ponzi scheme, and it's not going bankrupt. It is true that that surplus is going to be depleted by 2035, July 2035, I think. But the reason for that is income inequality. In other words, back in 1982, there was a cap placed on your Social Security on the dollars that you pay in. Did you know? Most of us don't, because we don't make $170,000. That you pay FICA on the first $170,000 that you make as an individual or as a family, which means you pay about $10,000 into Social Security to earn that benefit every year. Did you know that if you make $170 million, you pay the same $10,000 in? Because you only pay on the first $170,000. And after 1982, other things happened in our tax code that led to that 40-year period where real incomes only went up for the top highest percent. This is becoming dry like an economics class, isn't it? But there are many people, including your colleague John Larson, who put in bills every year saying, look, let's ask Warren Buffett. Let's ask. Let's require wealthier people to start paying in, because there's no cap like that in Medicare. Here's another big lie, and I'm going to show you my first slide. The other big lie, and you've heard Elon Musk and those boys say this, and they're almost all boys. He said the hiring ratchet only turns one way in the federal government, and that's up. This graph, the blue lines represent Americans that are in active beneficiary pay status. And you can see it going up, up, up. The red line is staffing at Social Security, which, because the House Republicans was level funded for about 10 years, which meant every year they had to go make up their rising fixed costs by letting the grim reaper of attrition take out more people. And then that precipitous drop you see right here, going way down, that's Doge. That's Elon Musk. And that's Donald Trump, who in the last 90 days pushed more people out of your already greatly reduced staffing at your agency, paying them with your money to leave right now, if they were retirement eligible, and they would leave right now and not let the door hit their backside on the way out, they would be paid for the entire year not to work. You want to talk about waste? That was the waste of your money at Social Security. So let me show you this next slide. Different representation. And there's some who will say, well, why don't you just cover that difference with better IT and IT modernization? Yeah, that'd be a good idea, but we haven't gotten any of that either in the last 10 years. This shows you the average number of employees per 10,000 people in 1995 compared to 2000. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. You're very inquisitive. I love your questions. Can you just let me get through these and then we'll come back and let everybody have their shot? Cool? All right, thanks. If you compare, this is the other big lie, waste and inefficiency at Social Security. It's a bloated, wasteful agency. No, it's not. There's a fair amount of process waste, and we have a plan for tackling that, and we were tackling it. But if you compare Social Security's overhead to the benefits paid, when we operated well, we operated on 1.2% overhead for benefits paid. Now that's been reduced to about 0.77 of 1%. If you compare that to Allstate's overhead is 19%. Liberty Mutual, Liberty, 23%. So the notion that this is some bloated, wasteful bureaucracy is simply not true. There was a great article the other day, just yesterday, in the New York Times, and this was its headline. The bureaucrat and the billionaire, inside Doge's chaotic takeover of Social Security. The gentleman pictured here with Elon Musk over his shoulder amidst the shredded Social Security card is Leland Dudek. And Leland Dudek became the acting commissioner of Social Security when it was discovered as a 5-level down member of the bureaucracy, a GS-14, I think. He was sharing your data, your personal data, which those folks have a culture as well as laws to protect. He was sharing it with the Doge team. Young people in their 20s who had not undergone the background checks, let alone the training to be able to even understand what they were looking at. Well, they weren't able to articulate why they needed to look at it. But the initial acting commissioner was placed him on administrative leave, and she was actually a very capable person, headed up the operations division, which was the 1,211 officers. Put him on administrative leave on a Friday, and by that Tuesday, after ironically President's Day weekend, she was forced out, and he became the new commissioner. And he greenlighted everything that the Doge team did thereafter. Brought in 2 whole offices, Office of Customer Service Transformation, told the head of it, you're fired, get a cardboard box, tell your other 80 people they're fired. Brought in the head of the Civil Rights, Equal Opportunity Division, 163 people, told her, you're fired, get a cardboard box, tell your other people they're fired. And created a spectacle in the parking lot of people crying on each other's shoulders with their belongings on the hoods of their car. Then they announced the next day, joyous news. We're going to pay you a cash incentive to leave right now because we've got to reduce this agency by 7,000. Not sure who came up with the 7,000 number. And so that's what then led to not only the biggest exodus in the shortest time of staffing, but also all of the customer service timeliness indicators that you have to access your benefits. It might be a change of address, it might be effectuating your retirement benefits, it might be the initial disability determination. All of those have started to go in the wrong direction after we had spent a hard-fought year getting them to move in the right direction, even with staffing at a 50-year low. That's now led to intermittent interruptions also in the IT systems, because they took the IT department down even lower to 50% of what it was when they started. And that whole IT system rides atop of a COBOL-based, COBOL computer language. Any computer programmers here? This guy's laughing in the front. So it's a COBOL-based system, and on top of it are about 2,000 other applications. And those are the folks that understand how it's all pieced together and how it works as 73 million people in pay status wash over those apps for updates. Then it goes through a narrow office called the Office of Benefit Information Systems, and then it gets direct deposited, like 18 million of it every week. And those intermittent interruptions, some of you have MySSA accounts. You've seen some of the, when you try to go on, sometimes they say, sorry, we can't accommodate that now. There's a lot of other applications as well. They totally collapsed twice when I was there. We weren't trying to drive people out. We got them back up by the weekend. But these intermittent interruptions are going to become more regular, and then ultimately I do believe it will cascade into a situation where we see the first interruption of benefits that this agency has experienced in 90 years. That doesn't mean that the whole thing is wiped out. Some people have asked me, Congressman, should I print out my earnings statement every day? No, I don't think you need to do that. It's backed up in 3 or 2 different locations every night. And ultimately, Treasury would have a memory of what it sent out the month before. But they have, and it's just not me saying this, Mike Astor's, President Bush's Commissioner of Social Security, and he said essentially the same thing. That the chainsaw, the speed, the recklessness with which they've gone through has put benefits at risk. So we need to rise up. We need to make sure our voices are heard. Let me go through the last few of these here, then we'll open it up to Q&A. These cats I learned in my year there collect a lot of numbers on a lot of things. And one of the things they collect numbers on are not only our first earnings, since our first summer job, but they also collect numbers on their own productivity, and it's audited. In fact, in the larger audit, which was done by Grant Thornton 4 years ago, and when I was there, it was by Ernst & Young, unlike the Department of Defense, they always get the highest rating in terms of their accounting, in terms of their internal controls. So productivity last year, they may go up by the largest amount since whatever that was, 2013. And we did that. We created this room within 30 days. Some of you being Californians are familiar with the concept of agile in software development, creating an every 2 weeks cadence. That's what we did. In the Army, you called it a battle rhythm. So we had the deputy commissioners gathered in the round there, and we had maps of how we were doing what we were doing in terms of effectuating benefits. And in some instances, they were able to get the 8-year best, I think, on effectuating retiree benefits, and a 25-year best in ALJ determinations. So we did 8 different meetings every 2 weeks, rinse and repeat. They last for 1 hour. And when we adjourned, we went to this room. Do you know what it was called? You're right, the follow-up room. And we do the stand-up after action there. This is one of the types of maps that we used to display to the public. All of that performance data has been wiped clean from the Social Security website now. I didn't check this morning, but the last few days I checked, it simply said under construction or something. So this is customer service. Each of those catchment areas represent one of the 1,211 field offices all across America. And they are now cramming more and more of us into those field offices by making it harder for us to do things by phone, or that we used to allow you to do online. And also, if people enter this country from another country legally, we used to automatically send them a Social Security card because they're required to pay FICA if they're working here legally. The Trump administration decided that no, they want all of those people to go to field offices too. So if any of you have had an experience in the field office, you've probably seen it's not very good if you've had to go there in the last few weeks. This is average speed of answer on the telephone. When I walked in, the average speed to answer was 42.5 minutes. And we got that down to 12.8 minutes by October. It's now going in the wrong direction. This was the effectuation of retiree and health benefits. You should try to get you the pay status within 2 weeks after completing the interview. The goal was that we do that for 85% of people within 2 weeks. They hadn't hit that since like 2019, but they got it up to 87% by the end of the year. Every 2 weeks, what are we doing? What can we do better? Workforce optimization, all of those things, running plays, measuring yardage. This is what that same trend looks like. If you look at the precipitous reversal of achievement, that is come January to February, when the Doge people came in and everybody started being exited from the agency. This is the initial disability determinations. Looks like a heat map. You Californians do better than most. I think the average time for disability determination in California, at least in March last year, was 197 days. More people now die waiting for their initial disability determination than ever before in the history of the program since Dwight Eisenhower signed it into law. And it's not because people aren't showing up for work, it's because there's not as many people. This is how we got what had been a 10-year growing backlog to finally start to, we finally started to reduce it with a few policy changes that your congressman helped us with, and got that one moving in a better direction. And I think it probably still is. This is the one that's the 25-year best. Social Security also runs the largest adjudicatory body in the free world, judges, that make the appellate decisions on the record if a person's denied at the initial claims level. So when I walked in, the average time it took for a decision was 405 days. They got that down to 277 days. And this is what that map looked like when we began, with the dark green being 270 days, the dark red, California was kind of hurting. This is where we got to by the end of that year. So that's kind of who we are and what we did at Social Security. I know I shared a lot of that with you quickly, and I might have skipped a couple of big myths. One that the Congressman mentioned was the zombie apocalypse. There are not 12 million dead people roaming the planet with, Social Security checks streaming out of their cadaverous pockets. It does not happen. We are automatically alerted anytime a death certificate is registered in any of the 50 states and territories, and Medicare automatically notifies us if somebody stops going. Another big myth that some of you might have heard that's pushed a lot is that illegal immigrants are sucking the system dry. They only come here in order to draw Social Security. Total poppycock. Illegal immigrants, so-called, the undocumented people who pick our fruit and work in our hotels and other places, they are prohibited from ever receiving any Social Security benefits. And yet, they contribute $25 billion to the rest of us. So, where does that leave us? We have not seen an interruption of benefits yet, which is really, really good. And, but it is precarious. And I do believe, and I spoke to the Congressman's district leader, your voices really matter. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent in Congress, you pay attention to how many people call you about what. So your voices, those of you who have been calling your congresspeople and senators and advocating and telling them to defend your Social Security that is an earned benefit, it makes a difference. In fact, I think it's the only thing that can keep this Jenga tower from toppling over, is people having their voices heard. It is the thing that rubs people the most negatively about these first 120 days of this new administration. So, don't give up. Invite people back to your table of democracy. Share with them the truth. And take heart. We're all in this together. We need each other. And we can save Social Security. Of that, I have no doubt. Thanks a lot.
Elimination provision, what the status is of that. So first of all, is that something that's affected by the new small ugly bill from Trump? And if not, are the regulations in place, and what are they say?
It's the law that was passed. President Biden signed into the law, and it's as secure as Social Security is, but clearly that's part of the program that's under attack.
You look perplexed. Yeah, it is. It's in law and it's secure, but it also suffers. It's part of the same system, so it suffers from the declining staffing. Smart people there figured out a way to automate much of that. They didn't think they were going to be able to, but they did. Many of the people that did that are probably since retired. But it's part of the same system, so it's safe in law, but everything's shaky right now because of the reductions in staff. Are the regs in place for the pay?
Because when I checked with Social Security Administrators, they said the regs aren't in place, we have to wait for the regs.
Interesting.
It generally takes time for the regulations to catch up, but I have not heard that.
What is this windfall provision we're talking
wants to try to explain that?
There are certain populations that didn't qualify for Social Security because of other retirement that they had. And notwithstanding the fact that they worked and they contributed to Social Security before they went into this other profession. And what we did is we passed a law that brought those folks into the system for that period of time.
Hi, thank you. First, I want to say that this presentation was really great, and that was really informative. Thank you to both of you. My question is on a somewhat different issue, however. So, you know, many people in here may or may not be aware that Donald Trump is seemingly about to begin military strikes on Iran. Today or tomorrow, any moment. Two members of the House of Representatives, Joe Khanna and Tom Massey, have advanced a bill to reassert Congress as a co-equal branch rather than when it comes to foreign policy for the last 80 years, it's been really a subservient branch to the executive. And to say this bill or this resolution would require Congress to approve any kind of military strike on Iran before he can do it. And so I would ask you, Congressman Thompson, would you support, would you co-sign and vote for this resolution requiring congressional approval for any military strike on Iran? And second, would you oppose going to war with Iran?
I haven't seen the bill, but conceptually, I believe that that's the right position to take. I think Congress has acquiesced in a lot of our powers, and I think we really need to get those back. The Iran question is a very, very difficult one, and I don't know that anybody knows what this administration is going to do. I don't think they know from one minute to the next. We've seen them all over the world, and that's not different from where they are in just about every policy they talk about. If you remember yesterday, they were not going to deploy ICE in agriculture or in hospitality. I think I said that correctly. Yesterday morning, they weren't going to deploy ICE in agriculture and hospitality. By yesterday afternoon, they reversed their position. So it's really hard to get a handle on what it is they're doing. What's happening in the Middle East right now is very, very serious. We should all be very concerned, and it's very, very dangerous. But I think Congress needs to step up, take our power back, and we need to be the entity that drives this.
Yeah.
And you may not know that people who were here a long time and have known me for a long time know that I was one of the people that went to Iraq before the war, saw for myself what they were doing, came back. I took a very strong position about us going to Iraq and voted against that bill. I got the moniker Baghdad Mike for doing that, but the fact of the matter is I was amongst those who were right. That was something we never should have done.
Governor O'Malley, thank you for being here. One cool thing about Social Security, you missed like to leave. I retired at age 64 in 3 months. I had a kid in high school. As a senior in high school, he received 6 Social Security payments worth $10,000, which is going to be a huge help as he goes on to college. So thank you for that. My question is to fix the system. You mentioned perhaps taking the cap off wages and fully taxing everything at 6.2%. Some of it was done for Medicare. The Social Security historically has had a very strong link between what you earn, what you put into the system versus what you take out. You're not paying a millionaire, 20% of their working salary as a retiree. So would you propose nothing for all those additional contributions that the millionaire might pay? And more broadly, if you could wave a magic wand, how would you stabilize and fix
sure there's two. I find myself torn between running for office and having a very firm proposal and then being beaten into the submission and the Senate confirmation process of having no opinion whatsoever on policy and just effectuate the will of Congress. The will of Congress has been expressed in a couple of different ways, not yet in law, but certainly in bills proposed. One of them is John Larson's bill on the House side that would, and the other one is Sheldon Whitehouse on the Senate side. You can probably Google them and find them and get into more of the detail. Both of them involve, though, and speak to what 80% of people, regardless of party, believe we should be doing with Social Security, which is actually to strengthen it for the future and to expand its benefits in the here and now. That for all our polarization and political differences, 80% of Americans believe it should be strengthened for the long term. President Biden had kind of between the lines supported, having people start paying into Social Security at $400,000 or above. There's also the last time there was a bill that recommended raising the age was, I think, 2012. I forget the fellow's name. It was a Republican congressman. So there are different calculations that go into, or different pieces of that actuarial calculation, but they all can be scored, and that's been done pretty openly and transparently in these various bills. And as Senator Cassidy, Republican senator from Louisiana, who looked at this a lot, he said each of these dials can be adjusted in concert to create that 75-year trajectory. Now, from my standpoint, politically, not to dodge your question, I think the answer is to ask wealthier people to pay young. And it is true that part of the strength of Social Security is that when you pay in, you get paid out. But actually, there is a progressive formula that means that people actually get a little more back if they were at an income level where they worked very hard but didn't make as much as others made. So there are bend points, right, that they call them. So, no, I don't think anybody, I'm not in favor of making sure that Warren Buffett gets a payout that's commensurate with what he pays out. Wealthier people benefit greatly from the land of the free, the home of the brave, and the rule of law. And we're all in this together. So that's me.
Prospects to get something passed.
Prospects to get some. A lot of Republican members said to me before this last election, when they thought there would be a Biden second term, and a lot of them were Republicans, said, I'm glad you're there because Governor said I had to bring people together, and as soon as this election's over, we're going to have to come together to make another one of those adjustments like we did in 1982. So I think the will is going to be there eventually. Might not be in the next 3 years, though.
You're right, it's politically tough because it's going to require either costing somebody more money or paying less benefits or some combination thereof. And it makes everybody very, very skittish. And you mentioned John Larson. I've co-authored his legislation. He was the chair, now the ranking member of the Social Security Subcommittee on Ways and Means. We work very closely together in that space. And he's very fond of saying, hey, it's an insurance policy. And if he were here, he would ask the question, is there anybody here who has an insurance policy that the cost of that policy hasn't increased over the years? He's put his bill together in a way where the cost of the insurance policy may go up, but the benefits coming back would also increase. And he also changes the marketplace, the market basket calculation that determines the increases in Social Security. So it really reflects the sort of thing that people are buying today. That's an old calculation. There's a lot of things that don't fall into that formula that should be addressed. But you're right, it is a tough one. And the last time, I think you referenced it in '84, Dick Durbin tells that story. He was a freshman member of the House from Illinois. And he said he was there 3 days and he got a call. And he said, hey, we need to fix Social Security because it's going broke. And everybody came together, it was bipartisan, they fixed it, and it's been going strong. And that's what we need to make sure continues to happen.
Can I add one more thing to that? When we talk about the Golden Brook, and this is for your tables of democracy, they're talking about that surplus reserve. If the surplus reserve were totally gone, what the actuaries forecast is then that all of us in beneficiary status would receive a 17% reduction. So let me ask you, if you had a family-owned business and your sister that does your accounting says we're going to have a 17% shortfall in 2035, you wouldn't immediately rush out and put a sign on the front of your business saying bankrupt in 2035, going out of business today. No, you'd make the adjustment. Because even if that surplus reserve weren't there, 83% of it would continue to function because it's a pay-go, dollars paid in with the dollars paid out.
Doing nothing.
Correct.
There is nothing that any one of us own, that maybe a cement ping pong table, that if you just did nothing, it would cure it somewhere.
Hi, good afternoon, Carmen Wright. Question, I am in the category, I'm an educator, so the windfall benefits me, it's my second career. And for educators, they take, I think, the 3 highest salaries to determine your retirement. For Social Security, I believe they take the last 10 years, they average it out, but when I was going back to it, it didn't seem to help much. Do you know if they're going to change that? If they're going to do something different where it does help? Is that clear?
I'll tell you, this program is in one sense conceptually very simple, and then when it comes down to working it out in individual lives, especially as you've had a varied career, some of it, outside of Social Security, and some of it where you were paying, and your employer paying into Social Security, and now you've had this adjustment of WEF GPO. I know this is not a satisfying answer. I would encourage you to go into a field office and sit down with one of the remaining people there and sort it out. If you think there's a discrepancy and you're not getting what you should be getting, you need to go see somebody at Social Security. Another one of the big myths that they have, that they say is that Social Security is inaccurate, that it's riddled with fraud and improper payments. The truth is, in the Title II, improper payments are 0.3%. In Title 16, which is SSI, it's more like 6% because that one varies a lot more from month to month. But in a particular case, I have to tell you, you should go into a field office and ask them to sort it out.
To get Social Security, do they average the last 10 years of your working life? Is that the calculation?
I do believe that they look at the last 10 years, the last 40 quarters. And that's what applies to
that
formula.
means educators or people with second and third careers at that, because it would have been better if you picked the 3 highest salary.
Right.
My first career was an engineer, so it was pretty high, and then as an educator, not so high.
Right, and then if your education stuff was outside of the system, that's where the WEP GPO came in, and so.
Right. Now they would get it, but it's okay.
Yeah.
That was a forever effort, as you know. So to get anything passed was almost unbelievable. And I'm sure things will have to be, because all of you know, nothing is ever solved with a bill. It's addressed, and there's other things that come about because of that.
But you did see some back pay catch up, didn't you?
I did. It was great.
Okay.
I worked with CTA, and we were advocating for that for over 10 years.
And they did audit it like in your own payment.
I need to do more investigation.
Okay.
But it's your advice.
Right.
Okay. One of the rumors that I'm concerned about is that Musk, Doge, even Trump's interest in Social Security, besides the money, was the data. And that they've already sold it to Palantir, or they're thinking about it, or what have you. Do you have any facts to address that? Thank you.
I'm concerned about every data that this Doge guy, Musk and his Doge Boys had access to. And I don't know that we'll find out in time certain what that is, what they've done with it, what they plan to do with it. But I think it's something we need to be on our guard about. I don't trust him, I don't trust them, and I suspect that there's going to be more rocky road as we go forward.
John, as far as this, it's hard to speculate exactly what they want to do with it. I've read the reports. They said that they're hoping to aggregate all of this into Palantir to that fellow, Peter Thiel, that they want to give the Social Security information, IRS. I'm not aware of a form that's actually been signed by Social Security. I am aware and can tell you factually that the reason that guy, whose picture I put up there, was put in charge of the agency was to give unfettered access, unrestricted access to the Doge people. And I can tell you that they had it for a good long time before a federal judge ordered that they stop, that they stay out of it, and that they put back in anything they might have downloaded and taken out from us. And I can also tell you, as a matter of fact, that last week the Supreme Court threw out that judge's stay and remanded it to her for a full hearing, and in the meantime has given Doge the ability to run amok and do whatever they want there. And sadly, there have been a lot of cases where the courts have stood up, in fairness to them. In this one, they didn't even write a single sentence to justify their order. There was like an 82-page dissent, but they didn't write a single sentence. So, and here's one of the things they've done with the data is to declare a lot of people dead that aren't dead. What they said was they were going to falsely put a death date in the records. Each time they did that, by the way, is a criminal charge. That they would mark as dead non-citizens who came here legally, but then overstayed their visa. They were going to, and this is their language, terminate their financial lives by marking them as dead. They have also supposedly marked another roughly 10 million records as void or deceased. I don't know exactly. All of this is still playing out. I was in Racine, Wisconsin, and two women opposite sides of the hall said, I had a friend who was wrongly declared deceased. In fact, they did so many of these so quickly and at such volume, they sent out a message to the field offices that if people should show up in the field office claiming to be alive, here's the steps that you need to go through to resurrect them. To resurrect their record. So they clearly want the data. The other thing that's kept in that data, anybody that cooperates with the FBI as a federal witness, say against the mob, and needs a new identity to be able to live safely, last term in the bed is a new Social Security number. People that worked with us in Iraq or Afghanistan and then came here and needed an identity, last term in the bed is a new Social Security number. Assets that are Central Intelligence Agency may turn from Communist China or Moscow, Social Security number. So now perhaps they can already do that from Tulsi Gabbard or other places. I don't know. But it should concern all of us. Just it's as if they shredded up the Privacy Act. And that's what we're operating under, or not under right now.
There was a young person in the front of that commission.
And I've had constituents who called me to tell me that they've been declared dead. And obviously if they're calling me, they're not. So.
Back to the House in 126, would we be able to strengthen the Social Security again? And like my wife eligible, but she's probably gonna wait till after that. Would that be a wise decision, or?
When we win back the House in this next midterm election, we'll be able to stop a lot of the stuff that we're doing. When we take back the government, then yes, we will be able to start fixing the things that they messed up. And there's a long list, as you know. The Social Security, that's something that's important to do. Every member on our side of the aisle, and I can't help but think that a lot of Republicans are going to see the light and join us on that.
So, first of all, I want to say, amazing presentation on the slides, and this is an awesome thing you guys are doing. I just had a question regarding, because of the national debt that we're at right now, the interest rate taking more and more of the taxes that we pay, and with Trump's attempt to cut Social Security with his spiel, his State of the Union, where he's like, oh, 360-year-old people are getting it, you know, all that stuff. Do you think that with the big beautiful bill, with the tariffs, Social Security is going to struggle?
Yeah, one of the provisions of that big ugly bill is an addition of $5 trillion to our national debt. And I don't know about you, but I learned a long time ago, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And if you look at the history of what added to our national debt, the big culprit are 2 rounds of Bush tax cuts and 1 round of Trump tax cuts. And now there's another round of Trump tax cuts that are teed up. The idea of being able to borrow is not to give people who don't need a tax cut. It's to be able to address problems that you have. And that can be a war, that can be a recession, that can be COVID-19. And it's understandable that if you have an emergency, not unlike what you do at home. You know, it's one thing to borrow money if the roof blows off your house, put a new roof on. It's another thing to borrow money to put down new carpets because you don't like the color of the ones you just put down last year. So it's kind of a simplistic example, but it's fitting. That's the case. So I think debt is important. I think debt's too high. I think we need to be doing everything we can, but I think we need to stop spending when we don't need to spend, for starters. Okay.
And that point about those tax cuts being for the super wealthy, I mean, if you see it on the chart, there's a guy named Michael Ratner who just the cars are. If you go on his Insta site, he posts a graphic there. It's really stunning what they're doing to give huge tax cuts to the super wealthy. We're talking. Is it Jamie Manning? I thought it was Michael Ratner or somebody who let me say a word about the debt. I showed you that 1.2% back when Social Security operated well. If Congress wanted to take them back to that modest overhead of 1.2%, they could, if they wanted to, take all of it out of that Social Security surplus reserve for the next 20 years. And it wouldn't add a single dime to the national debt because it's the Social Security Administration. When you read things in the paper, you sometimes see them conflating Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. But if you were to take that back up to 1.2%, take it all out of that surplus reserve, not only would it not add one dime to the debt, it would only advance the depletion date of July 2035 by 30 days to June of 2035. So this is Social Security is not the driver of deficits.
This is a personal question, but I filed a appeal because I got an overpayment 3 years ago. I can't get any movement, and you showed all these statistics. I've sat on the phone for 2 hours. I've been to the Social Security office, everything, and I can't get it resolved. I want a IRMA appeal, and because I have an overpayment, they won't show me what they've taken, how much they've given to Social Security, so I can't get my IRMA monies back. And I know this is probably over maybe some people's head, but I'm stuck.
I introduced earlier the incredible staff that we have working for us in our district. If you would flag one of them, you have to fill out a form, but do that, and my office will step in and try and help.
I want to know why it's 3 years.
You know, why is it taking 3 years?
Yes, since you were the commissioner.
Yeah, I was commissioner for 1 year, but let me show you why it took. That's why. Because the agency's operating with staffing at a 50-year low and customers at an all-time high. And when I got the call and was asked to go there, it wasn't because things were going well. We turned things in a better direction, but we didn't get it back to where it was. And so, but you have a great congressperson, and his staff, I know, have relationships with dedicated people still in there. One of the things that we didn't get moving in the right direction was a place called the Processing Center. That's where the more complex cases go, and that one's continued to grow. So I'm sorry, it doesn't need to be this way, and you're absolutely right that it shouldn't be. I don't doubt it. Ma'am, I visited field offices all year last year, and I don't doubt you at all. And I encourage you to talk to the congressman's staff and they'll know somebody to get to at Social Security and get it sorted out. I'm sorry. It doesn't need to be that way. It shouldn't be. For 1.2%, we had pretty good customer service.
I also just want to say it feels like they're waiting for you to die and they'll get it.
Yeah, that's not my experience. My experience with people at Social Security is that they're actually very decent, kind-hearted people once you can get to one of them. The problem is getting to them. And sometimes even when you get to them, there's so few people doing it. It's not like a drive-through McDonald's. There's other people that have to do pieces of it in order to sort out cases. So they don't feel like that. We don't feel like that. I know your congressman doesn't feel like that. And so take heart. And these folks, I think, will sort it out.
Steve Wagner. Steve.
I'm Beth Dorman, and I know that you are a member of the Ways and Means Committee. And how do you see that committee being actually a way in which we can help to get what we need?
In regard to Social Security? Well, that's the committee of jurisdiction for Social Security. And we've been working on this. The governor mentioned John Larson's legislation that I was a co-author of. And as I mentioned to someone, the politics of it became a problem. Because if you cut something, that's a political problem. If you increase cost, it's a political problem. But I think what John Larson needs to do, and we're in the minority now, but he's been raising a pretty loud voice about the need to address these issues. And I think we need to continue to talk about those things, continue to push and make sure that we do deal with it. And I believe it needs to be done in a bipartisan way. That's how most things that are done in a bipartisan way usually have a greater shelf life and they're more accepted. That's what happened the last time they took on Social Security, and I think we need to get there again. And I think the governor was right. His example about, if you have the same problems in your business, you don't go out and put a sign up in front and say, I'm going bankrupt. We've got time, but we need to keep pushing. The longer it takes, the more thorny it's going to be to fix. So contact, I hate to say this, contact your member of Congress. Let them know that you care about that. You've got cousins and sister-in-laws and kids and sorority sisters in other parts of the country. It's the same with everything we're dealing with right now. You need to make your voice heard and make sure that not only the blue members of Congress are hearing about these concerns, but the red members are as well.
And I'm glad your staff, Congressman's staff of Ways and Means, in that room where we wrestle with these challenges, it's hard to see from this picture, but that was all tricked out with microphones and also different cameras, and their staff was always very dutiful about attending virtually and helping us untangle some of these things. I showed you that backlog that we got to go in the right direction. They were policy changes that congressional staff had to be okay with and had to help us do as well. So I can just tell you, not one year of openness and transparency, the Ways and Means staff none were better than the ones that you guys oversaw.
First of all, thank you, Governor, and I appreciate your PAC thing you did a year and a half ago in Vacaville. Really helps a lot of people. I apologize for amount of money going out is less than coming in by a relatively small amount. And you cover it by the treasury notes. I don't understand how that's not part of the debt if they have to take those treasuries and give it back to the Social Security. And the other thing is, aren't they making enough interest on that to cover 100 billion or whatever it is? The interest on the treasury notes, shouldn't that, it's 2 trillion or something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's public math, but,
No, you're not wrong. We should all be able to understand this. It's our republic. No, I think I understand what you're saying. How do I respond to this? Ever since, at least since 1983, we've been required to put it into treasury notes. And while it is true that if the federal government suddenly gave back all the money that people invested in treasury notes, including us, that they would have to go somehow find another way to borrow it. So yes, in 2 or 3 weeks, you can say that contributes to the deficit, which is, and there's actually a disagreement within your own government. CBO often likes to say that Social Security ultimately, because of those 2 or 3 leaks, would contribute to the deficit. And they assume that when we get to that point when it's depleted, that Congress will borrow the money rather than adjust the program to make sure that more comes in through FICA, so that it's a self-sustaining. They do borrow the money. Social Security does lend the money to the federal government. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Doesn't have to. It only has to if Congress decides to do indebtedness rather than taxing wealthier people and asking them to pay their fair share. You know, it's like saying, but those are the choices that go in the government. Yeah, that one, the question. So your point, the gentleman's point was, shouldn't the interest that the federal government's making on money that we have lent them by buying the treasury bonds, shouldn't the interest they're making offset that difference? I don't know. Nobody's ever asked it quite that way. I'll go back to my brain trust and ask my now retired actuary how that might work. No. It's good. It's a good question.
So if the money that is produced by the working class goes into Social Security and that same amount, along with some of the reserves, goes back out into people who get those benefits, how does it account for the difference in populations? For example, how the baby boom, there was a big surge in births, and now there's a downward trend. How does it account for more people collecting than there were people working again into it?
Yeah, there's a report. There's a report every year of the trustees, and it's public, and it's Social Security trustees report. The latest one hasn't come out yet. They're like 2 months overdue. But the last one talked about those various things. There are different factors that go into the actuary's calculation, and they do the best they can to forecast 75 years into the future. And the biggest challenge in the report that was given to us last year by the actuaries is declining birth rates and declining rates of legal immigration. And those are the 2 things that they felt were the biggest threat to, the kind of demographic challenge. They believe that the birth rates will come up, that they won't be permanently going down. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that any of them has a crystal ball, but they do their best to chart that, including factoring things in like, the demographic bulges and the other things. When they know that when we've already been born, it's an easier thing than forecasting for generations that haven't been born. But yeah, it's all part of the trustees report. And they try to make it intelligible. You get it, I got it. I was a C student.
So I have a question, but before that I have a testimonial. I had an issue with SSCA, and I tried to call them many times for 3 months, and emails and so forth, and they never respond. So I contacted your office, and the day after I signed the paper releasing, The next day I was teaching, SSA called me 6 times during the class. I could not take the phone, and they resolved the problem immediately. So thank you very much. My question is with regard to the contribution of those that are not legal in this country, the undocumented. So they are obliged to contribute. I worked in Japan for 16 years, and right there is all or nothing. 30 years or we don't get anything. When I left, they returned my contribution. Now my question is that if the undocumented is obliged to contribute to Social Security, under the hope that one day they become legal and they get some return, but if they are deported, you are expelled them from the country, would you need at least morally right to return the contribution?
Perhaps, but that's not what we do. Perhaps, but that's not what we do. So, if people, undocumented people who pay in $25 billion for the rest of us that don't ever see a dime of. It's a different nuance when it's people who have come here legally and are paying in. They can earn credit, actually. And I think probably they don't even have to become citizens if they're legally working long enough to acquire those 40 quarters for 10 years. So that can happen. But in terms of the undocumented, they never see a dime of it back, ever.
But it would not be the case of Congress to change the legislation to allow that. I think it's
Possibly.
that we will get from then and they don't get anything back.
I'll hold out great hope that we will become a kinder and more just nation.
For one more question.
Thank you so much, Congressman and Governor, for this presentation. I really appreciate it. So I've been on Social Security Disability and SSI since I was found to be disabled in, 2009, after a rigorous process, I will say. And really Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and subsidized housing together, the three-legged stool that is what keeps me safe and as healthy as possible and housed. All three pieces are so important. And without any of them, then the whole thing becomes unstable. And it would lead really quickly to, at the very least, homelessness. And so I feel a great deal of urgency about this. So I really appreciate, Governor, all of the public speaking that you've been doing about this. I believe I saw in probably PBS NewsHour a few months ago, you saying you're concerned about that Social Security might actually miss some payments, and urging people to try to save what you can. For people like me who receive SSI, there's of course the asset limit. And so since the asset limit hasn't gone up since 1989, from $2,000 for an individual or $3,000 for a couple, as I feel like I'm between so many rocks and so many hard places with this. There's no way to save because I would lose my benefits and then lose the linked Medi-Cal. But also I only end up with a few dollars at the end of the month anyway. And so I appreciate if there are any ideas about what people who are in that situation can do. And Congressman, I have a question about increasing the asset limits, which I realize we're probably in a different climate right now, but there is, in fact, a bipartisan bill that's been introduced this year that would increase the asset limits. And that's the HR 2540, and it's the SSI Savings Penalty Elimination Act. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to co-sponsor that. It's not online, so so thank you so much for co-sponsoring.
Yeah, it doesn't work the way it is now, and most certainly doesn't work with the rule of that. That's it.